Thank you.
I call David Seymour.
I rise on behalf of the ACT Party in support of the Regulatory Systems Building and Housing Amendment Bill, Regulatory System Commercial Matters Amendment Bill and Regulatory Systems Workplace Relations Amendment Bill. These are three bills, formerly the Regulatory Systems Bill, that will now go to separate and different select committees so that they can be properly examined by the select committee process and submitted upon by the public. Mr Speaker, I'd just like to come back a little bit to comments Mr Cunliffe made that it's taken 2 years from the report that led to the topics in this bill to the bill going before Parliament. And the fact of the matter is that it may have escaped Mr Cunliffe's attention, but there was a lengthy period where an exposure draft was given to people affected by the bill, people in the sector, actually anybody in the public who might have wanted to give feedback on the Regulatory Systems Bill as it was then. And indeed, a number of people made contributions and comments that were helpful to the formation of the Regulatory Systems Bill. Now, Mr Speaker, I also just like to come back another step to talk about the importance of regulatory reform. And I'm very proud to be the Parliamentary Under-Secretary to the Minister of Regulatory Reform. On behalf of the ACT Party, I'm very proud that there is such a Minister because it's something that ACT's brought about. And the reason we thought it was so important to bring this about is that governments can effectively do one of three things. They can either tax and spend money acquired using the sovereign power of government. They can own assets, be it land, buildings, businesses, or anything else that a government might own, or a government can use its sovereign power to regulate all of those things that are private property that they haven't already taxed or decided to own on behalf of the people. And the interesting thing is, Mr Speaker, that we are lucky as New Zealanders to have inherited very good institutions around taxation and expenditure and ownership. Our Fiscal Responsibility Bill, now part of the Public Finance Act, is world class. One of the reasons that the government changed in 2008 was that Ruth Richardson's bill, which required an opening of the books in the form of a pre-election fiscal update with full cost accrual accounting, revealed to the public just how badly managed the government's finances were at that time, and I believe that's one of the things that precipitated a change in government. So we're very well served to have full cost accrual accounting published regularly when it comes to our government's use of taxation and expenditure of government money. And while ACT would argue that the government owns far too much in the way of capital assets, we actually have pretty good rules and processes around managing the things that the government actually owns. We can find from the Crown Ownership Monitoring Unit and its successor how many businesses the government owns, and even if we don't like the returns that the government gets from those, we find that actually we get pretty good returns pretty weak returns, but at least we are able to assess what it is that the government owns and what benefit the public gets from public ownership. But when it comes to the third activity of government, not expenditure, not ownership, but regulation, it has to be said that we have a lot of work to do in improving our institutions so that we have a better regulated society and that we can use the private property that government hasn't taxed and doesn't yet own more efficiently. Mr Speaker, if you look at some of the challenges that we face in New Zealand at the moment, I can't think of many challenges that would not be dramatically lessened had we had functional regulation of housing markets. The fact that we are a country that is 0.8% populated geographically and yet has managed to manufacture an artificial shortage of land on which you can build and push house prices through the roof is at the root of many of our challenges today as a country, whether it be concern about immigration, house prices, inequality, or infrastructure cost rates or whatever. Many of the challenges we face are due to that regulatory failure. And so I pick up on what David Cunliffe said, that it is very important that this government has a regulatory reform agenda. I'm very proud that ACT has helped to bring that about, working with the National Party over the last 2 terms of government and this one. And I'm proud today to see that we have a regulatory systems bill that shows this government is prepared to commit House time, is prepared to make a commitment to tidying up some of the impediments to good regulation. And people might be wondering, for instance, what exactly are some of the concrete examples of this. Well, one of them, for example, is what we see in the Regulatory Systems Building and Housing Amendment Bill. And we see when it comes to the Unit Titles Act that for perhaps good reasons at the time the legislation was made many years ago, we see, for example, that it's very difficult to subdivide a unit title. We see it is very difficult for an owner to give the right to a body corporate, or for a body corporate to give an easement for someone else to use a unit title when there is no sound reason for that restriction to exist. And we see this throughout the 3 bills. On it goes that there are regulations that haven't been made for sound reasons but nonetheless constrain what people are actually able to do with the private property the government hasn't already taxed or decided to own. And we see this throughout each of these bills, making it easier for people to get on with their lives, use their property, become prosperous and flourish. And for that reason, I'm very proud to be part of this regulatory reform kaupapa and to be standing here in support of this bill today, which the ACT Party commends to the House. Thank you, Mr Speaker.